you do that? How did you do that?
Welcome back everyone to another ESO build video. Today it's going to be the update to Sting, the Stamina Nightblade for the Elsweyr chapter. This is focused on fairly easy to acquire gear in comparison to most, and above all, a static rotation. So, if you are confused with the Nightblade and a dynamic rotation is too difficult for you, and you can't keep an eye on all of your bonuses and buffs that are going on, this is already covered in the rotation for you, so everything is already calculated. All you've got to do is apply it. So, first of all, we're going to go into the stats. We're on 16.3k max health, which will go up with buffs, of course, and we're on 32k max stamina. 1.5, almost 1.6k recovery. Now, if you do change your race, that can go up to way over 2k, but we'll cover that when we get to the passives. We're on 4k weapon damage, 51% crit, and 11k resist across the board. Just bear in mind, there are some passives that will alter a lot of this. So, the weapon damage will go up, the crit chance will go up, the resists will go up. We'll get to that when we go into the passives anyway. We're 64 points into max stamina. We're at stage 4 vampire. We are using Artaeum takeaway broth, but if you can't afford this stuff, of course, you can use Dubious Command Throne, or you can use flat stat food if you want, but you will have to heavy attack a bit more. And we're using the Shadow Mundus Stone. Now, I'm going to explain the skills in detail. I will go over everything, so if you're not familiar, obviously, this will help you. If you are familiar and you haven't paid attention, perhaps, to the new updates in Elsweyr towards the Nightblade, this may also be beneficial to you. So, I'm going to go over everything, but if you do skip, it is at your own risk, and I won't be answering stuff that's already been said in the video. Now, first of all, we are using Rendon Slashes. This is in the dual wield skill line. It's the second ability to unlock. Starts off as Twin Slashes, morph it to Rendon Slashes. This is very, very simple. It applies a single target, damage over time, bleed to the target. Now, it does have an initial hit, which unbuffed says 2.9k. There is another morph for this, which will actually hit for about 2.3k on the initial, just once every 10 seconds when you apply it. And the bleed is exactly the same, but it will heal you once every 2 seconds. So you can either take the healing morph or the flat damage increase on the first hit morph. It's entirely up to you, but Rendon Slash is what we're using for the purpose of this build. If you want to change it, you're more than welcome to. Now, this here is Rearming Trap. This comes from the Fighters Guild skill line. Where's it gone? There we are. Very, very simple. 5th ability to unlock. You need Fighters Guild 8 for this, so it takes a bit of time. But what you need to do, basically, is put this on the ground. And it lasts 6 seconds. As you can see, it does damage over 6 seconds in the tooltip. But, because it's called Rearming Trap instead of Trap Beast, which is the morph of it, it rearms and applies for another 6 seconds. You actually get 2 6 seconds damage over time out of this, which lasts 12 seconds in total, of course. But during its duration, you are granted Minor Force, increasing all critical damage that you do by 10%. And obviously, we want to make sure that we can crit, want to make sure we increase our damage, and this will contribute towards that. It does immobilize targets that can be immobilized. It doesn't immobilize bosses, of course, but the damage still applies, and so does the Minor Force to you. So always keep this under your target. Every single rotation, you want one of these. Now, next up is Relentless Focus. This is an assassination skill line. It's a 5th ability to unlock. Starts off as Grim Focus, morph it to Relentless Focus. Now, this did get changed in Elsweyr. This lasts 30 seconds now instead of 20, and it does not apply Minor Berserk. No, Nightblades didn't get nerfed per se in group or trial content because you can still get that buff from a healer applying a combat prayer. However, solo, you are going to have to find your own way to get that bonus. Now, what this does is after over 30 seconds, all light attacks or heavy attacks that you do will grant you stacks up to 5 times. And each one will increase your damage mitigation, the reduction to damage you take, by 3%. So a maximum of 15% damage mitigation if you do 5 light attacks or heavies. Now, this isn't properly explained in the skill, but basically what this does, while you've got it active, every light or heavy you do will give you 1 point or 2 points. See, that wasn't clear in the description. Now, what you need to do is activate this, and it's on for 30 seconds. Here's a tip for you. In your combat options, this has been in the game for quite a long time, but most don't actually know this, and I did overlook it in my previous video, so I will explain it here. Go into combat and put on permanent effects. If you do that, you can not only see the buff, which you can see anyway, but every light attack you do, you can see a duplicate of that buff with a number 1 in it. Do it again. It's got 2 in it. Now, if you activate a heavy attack, it's 2 points, not 1. It doesn't say that in the description. 2 again. And you can see that the skill changed to a purple ability, which is this bow here. Now I'm going to explain that. So, first of all, every 1 light attack will give you 1 tick. So every 1 will give you 3% reduction to damage incoming. Every heavy attack will give you 2 of those. So you can calculate that however you see fit. 5 light attacks, or 1 light attack and 2 heavies, or 3 light attacks and 1 heavy. As long as it amounts to 5, you'll get the maximum potential out of it. Then you saw my skill change to a purple ability. When you reach 5 ticks, you've got 2 choices. You can keep those 5 and keep the damage mitigation bonus, or you can fire off a bow, which will do a huge amount of disease damage for half the cost of the skill, and it will heal you for 33% of the damage done if you are within 7 meters of the target. So, as long as you keep up your light attacks and your heavy attacks in your rotation, you will consistently receive less damage up to 5 ticks, and then you can get a damage boost and a heal out of it if you choose to take it. Note, I said if you choose to take it. That is very, very important, and when I get to the rotation, I'm going to explain why I've said it that way. Mostly during execute. Next up is, you got to keep this running all the time, however. So basically in our rotation, we want to run it every second rotation, roughly, just to make sure we're on top of it. You can run it every third if you want, but it can get a little tricky, but every second rotation is normally fine. Next up is surprise attack. This is our main spammable. This is in our shadow skill line. This is the first ability to unlock, so you get it very, very early, called Veiled Strike, morph it into surprise attack. Now, this is quite cheap as well as far as spammables go. It does direct physical damage when you hit them, and a small proportion of their armor is reduced, their physical resistance, in fact, by 5% for 10 seconds, if you are flanking the enemy. So if you're behind or to the side of them, you'll actually reduce their physical resistance. It's a very, very small amount, but of course, for hitting a target in the back, especially during gaps in buffs and debuffs, you will hit a bit harder. Now, this also applies a bonus if you are sneaking or invisible, but that's not going to be that important. But this does give us another passive as well. I will get to the passives, don't panic, but there is another thing to consider while using this skill. So just bear that in mind, especially like this skill when it comes to execute. Now, speaking of which, our execute is Killer's Blade, and this is also in the Assassin's skill line. This is, if I can get to my skills, the first ability you unlock starts off as Assassin's Blade, morph it to Killer's Blade for the stamina variation of it. It's quite cheap, it is a spammable as well, but this spammable must only be used at certain times. If you hit the target while they're 25% health or under, you will actually do 300% more damage. So this is an execute. Never use this unless the target is below 25% health. That's when you start doing your business and start hitting really, really hard. This is your main spammable for the most of the fight. This is your main spammable for execute. So low health targets only. Not to mention, of course, this does have another bonus. You heal if an enemy that you've just hit with this ability dies within 2 seconds. This also is in proportion with your max health. So the higher your health, the stronger this heal actually is. So if you're a tank, by the way, not relevant for this particular build, but if you are a tank and you sneakily put this on the target just before something dies and you have loads and loads of health, you can get quite a big heal from this. But that's a separate subject. Next up is Flawless Dawnbreaker. This is on our front bar for passives only. This is in the Fighters Guild skill line. You need Fighters Guild level 10 for this. Now, we never ever use this ability. It's Dawnbreaker, by the way, morphed to Flawless Dawnbreaker. We never use this ability. It is just for the 5% weapon bonus on the front bar. The back bar ultimate is what we need to use all the time. It was previous on our front bar with Dawnbreaker on the back just to plug the gap for missing weapon damage. You can still do that. If it's comfortable for you to use your back bar ultimate, which I'm going to show you in a moment, on your front, because you can use it easier rather than using it and then swapping bars, that's still fine. You'll still get very, very similar numbers. But if you want to optimize to the smallest amount, the tiniest amount of increase, and you're comfortable with the rotation, then put Flawless Dawnbreaker on the front. The choice is actually yours, but we'll get to that in a moment. Now, next up is Resolving Vigor. That comes from the Assault skill line. This is a heal, basically. Very, very simple. Apply that, and you heal over time for 5 seconds, and so do other people that reach it. So, keep that on your bar at all times. You are going to need it. Don't spam it. It lasts 5 seconds. Just recast it if you need to when it runs out. Never spam it because you're going to run out of juice really quick. It's quite expensive. Next up is Poison Injection. Of course, this is in a bow skill line. It's the last ability to unlock. Starts off as Poison Arrow, morph it to Poison Injection. This is really, really simple. Keep it on your target all the time. It's a 10-second damage over time. Has an initial hit and then 10 seconds from there. That is pretty straightforward, but what you do need to understand about this ability is not only does it do damage over time for a 10-second duration, but it also gets dramatically more aggressive the lower the target's health. So you have a execute spammable here, but you also have a passive execute here. Under 50%, the lower their health goes, the more damage you will do, up to a maximum of 260% extra. So this is very strong. Keep it up all the time. Razor Caltrops is next. You will have to go to PvP for this and Vigor, by the way. It's in the Assault skill line. It starts off as Caltrops, morph it to Razor Caltrops. Now, before I explain this skill, Vigor and Caltrops do need alliance points in order to level up the Assault skill line. If you don't like PvP or you don't get that successful as far as alliance points are concerned inside Cyrodiil, and you just keep getting wrecked all the time, you never find out where the points are, you can't take castles, whatever. If you don't like it and you can't play it, you can go to Battlegrounds, and there, it's a place where if you suck, it doesn't matter. Because if you die and you lose, you will still get 7k alliance points or so for losing. Every single game you play, you will get points. So suck it up, get into Battlegrounds, get your points, and get out. This basically is a really large area of effect. Damage over time ability. Throw it. Everything here will take damage every 1 second. But the initial hit hits harder. There's a big burst hit when you first make it land. So if you're not firing off your ultimate this rotation, when you fire it, you want to swap bars really quick so it lands on your dual wield and hits harder. But that must be kept up at all times. Do not spam it though. It is expensive. It lasts 12 seconds. So you can keep this up easily in your rotation just by casting it once every single time that you come to the back bar. Next up is Leech and Strikes. This is in a Siphoning skill line. It's a bit of a pain in the ass to get, to be fair, because you do need to get to the 4th ability. Starts off as Siphoning Strikes. Morph it to Leeching Strikes. You will have to slot these on your bar while leveling, although you won't use them afterwards. So just for the sake of leveling up this skill line, put a couple on there, and then once you get this, dump these points and put them into here. Now, what this does is every light attack or heavy attack you do, you actually restore resources. So you get health back. But during its duration, while it's ticking over, it is counting up a pot, if you like, and it's filling and filling and filling and filling, and when it runs out, you will get what is calculated up or mounted up over time. Now, if you let it run its full course, you will get 4,270 stamina back. All you have to do is apply this. However, if you apply it before it runs out, the pot that has been filled, up to whichever amount of stamina it's up to at the moment, will then be consumed. So if I activate it now, I will get stamina back, even though it hasn't finished yet. So we keep this in our rotation 100% of the time. What we try to do is reapply it every rotation just to keep the uptime on it and to keep that stamina coming. But if it runs out, that's fine. You still get all the stamina. Just make sure that you reapply it as soon as you can. You do get health back for each light or heavy attack that you do. Obviously, heavy attacks will restore twice the value, but this will also restore stamina every light and heavy as well. So 1.4, almost 1.5k for a light attack in terms of healing, which will be 3k of a heavy, 106 stamina for light attacks, and 212 back if it's a heavy as well. So the more you keep up your lights and heavies, the more resources you get back, the more health you get back, the longer you stay in the fight. Just make sure you keep on top of this buff. You must keep it running at all times. Don't spam it because you'll hit negative returns, because if you use it too often, you'll just spend 756 stamina rather than actually gaining back what you need. But if you keep this up every rotation, you'll have really good stam sustain. Failing that, you can keep it up every second rotation and you're guaranteed the full amount, but you will have a downtime on it, so it's up to you. Now next up is Endless Hail. It's in the bow skill line. Second ability to unlock. Starts off as Volley, morph it to Endless Hail. Now this is very simple, much like Caltrops, big AoE on the ground. Endless Hail is a smaller AoE on the ground, but also stays where it is. So keep these two overlapped at all times, cast them once every rotation, and make sure they don't run out if you can help it. Endless Hail, however, instead of ticking every 1 second, actually ticks every half a second, and this gets really aggressive with a Maelstrom bow, so if you have got access to it, make sure you put it on. Next up is our back bar ultimate, and this is Incapacitating Strike. Starts off, it's in the Assassin skill line by the way, starts off as Deathstroke, morph it to Incapacitating Strike. Now, this does deal disease damage on impact, but to the target affected, all of your damage is increased by 20% for 6 seconds. It's really, really cheap. It only costs 70 ultimate. You want to use this at all times. If you cast this while you have 120 ultimate, so if you've got way over what you need, you will actually silence the target for 3 seconds as well. So it's really, really effective for trying to stop things casting if it needs to, if you've got enough ultimate for it. But that's not the main reason we're using it. We're using it for the damage bonus. So as soon as you've got it, fire it. Also, while slotted, you gain Reeve, which restores 100 magicka and stamina when you deal damage with a light or heavy attack on an enemy with a negative effect active on them. So while light attacking on your bow, while on the bar that this is on, you will actually get back resources if the enemy is affected with something bad, which is a bit mental. Now, remember I said that you can use this on your front bar, or we used to. Now, when you generate an ultimate, of course, you've got to keep an eye on how much ultimate you need for your ability to fire. You could be on the front bar, currently sitting on about 80, 90, whatever. You could have fired it. So you've got two choices. You can swap to your back bar and get a sneaky shot in and swap back, which can get complicated for some people. Or you can wait until you get to your back bar and then fire it before you swap. That is your two basic options for this particular setup. However, if you want to use the old setup, where Flawless Dawnbreaker was on the back to plug the 5% damage loss, if you like, weapon damage that we don't have on this bar, just for when you're there, and you put this on the front bar, yes, your overall skills will hit a little bit less because we're missing the weapon damage, but you can easily track this if you're not that experienced and use it more often. So your damage will be roughly the same because you'll probably fire these out a bit more regular rather than waiting always until you're on the back. But again, it's a choice that you can make. Flawless Dawnbreaker and Incapacitating Strike in this order, or flip them around to make it easier for you. Your choice entirely. But if you want to get the extra numbers, then of course this will give you a little bit extra. Now, we're going to go into passives, if that wasn't already too confusing. Stay with me, we're going to go through these, don't worry. Now, Master Assassin increases your weapon and spell damage by 10% while you're sneaking or invisible. That's not really that relevant because we're not sneaking or invisible, and increases the duration of stun from sneak as well by 100%. PvP, solo, stealing stuff, by all means get this, but if not, you don't necessarily need it. When an enemy dies within 2 seconds of being damaged by one of your assassination abilities, you restore 1876 magicka or stamina, whichever's highest. Our stamina is the highest, so if we use Killer's Blade, or our bow proc from Relentless Focus, and the target dies within 2 seconds, we actually get stamina back. So in big ad pulls, this can be really beneficial. You just run around stabbing stuff. Increases your weapon and spell crit ratings by 438 for each assassination ability slotted. As you can see, we've actually got 2 on this bar, so we get a rather hefty bonus to our crit chance. However, like I said earlier, if you do flip these around, because it's easier for you to use, you'll get a further increased crit chance damage, crit chance bonus, because you have another ability on the bar. So this can actually be higher. Up to you, however. It's a trade-off. Weapon damage for crit chance, up to you. Now, this increases your critical damage by 10%. We do have a crit damage bonus already in our Beast Trap, and this does contribute also. Just for being a Nightblade, we get a really good crit damage bonus. So we've got a crit, and also dealing critical damage grants you and your group minor savagery, increasing your weapon crit rating and theirs by 1320 for 20 seconds. So you've got this crit chance bonus here while you're in combat, as long as you're doing crit damage. You've got a crit damage bonus here as well on the same passive, and don't forget we've got a crit chance here if we do have assassination abilities on our bar, so make sure you do utilize these passives. Shadow, of course, increases your health, stamina, and magic recovery by 15%. We need the stamina recovery because we'll be spamming abilities like hell. Health recovery is hit and miss because we're a vampire, but we'll take the passive anyway. Get this. Casting a shadow ability grants you major resolve and major ward for 6 seconds, increasing the physical and spell resistance by 5280. This duration is increased by 25% for each piece of heavy armor equipped. We have no heavy armor equipped. We're using 7 medium on purpose. You can use 1 heavy, 1 light, 5 medium if you want, but your sustain will suffer, so just consider that. We'll get to that when we get to the armor passives, but this is very, very, very nice for sustain with 7 medium. Now, just remember what I said earlier about this ability being helpful, not just during the fight, but also at execute. There's a reason for this. This passive gives you a resistance buff for using a shadow ability. So, if we use surprise attack, for example, look at our buffs. You can see there, I've got a blue one and a gold one. That is an increase to 5280 physical and spell resistance. We looked at the beginning, my resists were 11k. Now, they're not. They're 16.4. As long as you're keeping up this spammable ability, you will keep that resistance buff, it will keep reapplying, and you are quite tanky. Now, at Execute, if you're spamming Killer's Blade instead, you don't have that resistance buff because we're not using any shadow abilities. So, in really stressful situations, especially if you don't have a Warden supplying this buff for you already, you might occasionally want to throw in a sneaky surprise attack every so often to keep your resistance buff up. That is up to you, but if you are struggling at Execute, there's lots of damage coming in, just one surprise attack every 6 seconds will keep that up for you. Just bear that in mind if you need to. Very helpful passive. Increase your max health by 3% for each shadow ability slotted. We've got one on the front bar, we have increased to health. Brilliant. Increase the duration of your shadow abilities by 2 seconds. This does apply to the penetration debuff on this, so that will help as well. Siphoning, of course you need these. After drinking a potion, this is nuts. Our ultimate is only 70. After drinking any potion, you get 20 ultimate. Keep your potions running. That is insane. We're not a Magicka build, so we don't actually use any magic abilities, except perhaps if we slot something for Sanctum Ophidia, we have to get rid of the magic bomb. But even then, this passive isn't necessarily relevant. So if you are using this for multiple different roles, perhaps you have a magic and stam role and you just flip your skills out, then of course you might want this. But if not, then you can ignore this one completely. Increases your healing done by 3% for each siphoning ability slotted. If you pop Vigor on this bar, you will get a stronger heal. Casting a siphoning ability generates 2 ultimate. This effect can happen once every 4 seconds. So, keeping this in your rotation, every time you fire it within 4 seconds of each other, you will, or after 4 seconds of each other, you will get 2 ultimate back. So, your potion gives you 20 ultimate, this gives you 2. And it will really, really help towards being able to spam this. Now, next up is dual wield. You need all of these. This increases the damage of your dual wield abilities by 20% against enemies under 25% health. So your light attacks and your rend and slashes will contribute towards this. Now your offhand weapon deals 6% more damage than it normally would. Offhand weapons are actually weaker than main hand weapons, so this helps. Reduces the cost of dual wield abilities. We're only using one, but we do want the reduction to cost. When you attack enemies that are stunned, immobilized, disorient, or silenced, which you can silence enemies with your ultimate, by the way, this will give you a 15% damage bonus to those targets. This also is based upon weapons you hold. So, if you have an axe, you have a chance to apply bleed. If you have maces, you go through physical resistances. If you have swords, you increase all of your flat damage. And if you have a dagger, it increases your crit chance. Now, this is per weapon. So, each one is twice if you double them up. We're actually using 2 swords. Don't laugh. It will become clear when we get to the gear. We're using 2 swords to give us a 6% increase to all of our flat damage. Yes, I tried with 2 daggers. Yes, I tried with axe and dagger and sword and dagger and all the rest of it. Based on how we're set up, 2 swords did actually perform about 3 to 4k extra on a full raid target. So this was very, very nice indeed. The gear is going to make sense of this passive, by the way. On the bow passives, we are going to make sure we get all of these, of course. At long range, you have a 12% increase to damage for any bow ability. So light attacks, volley, poison injection. So on the run up to a fight, perhaps, maybe you're on the way in, you can get the extra damage while you're approaching the target. Or even inside mechanics when you have to go backwards and be really, really careful and all that stuff. This will help, so you got to get that. Increases weapon crit rating by 1095. Basically equivalent of having a dagger on the back bar. Really, really nice. Get that. Reduces the stamina cost of bow abilities by 15%. They are expensive. We do want to get the cost down. When dealing damage with a light or heavy attack, this will increase the damage of your bow abilities by 5% for 5 seconds. And it will stack up to 5 times. So every light attack we do will add an additional 5% damage to our bow abilities, including the light attacks. And as long as you keep those up, this will stack and can stay up consistently. But we're using a bow on the back bar and dual wield on the front. So by the time we swap to the front, eventually this buff will fall off. But it will benefit us for the time that it is up. Got to keep your light attacks up though. Very important. Not just for relentless focus, because we do want to keep up our light attacks, but also for our Hawkeye passive as well. Hasty retreat, of course, is very important. This will give you major expedition for 4 seconds after you dodge roll, increasing your movement speed by 30%. So if you dodge, you run faster. But be careful. If you dodge roll too often, one after the other, you will get a negative effect, making each one after cost more and more and more. So be very, very careful. Don't spam that. Just use it when you can, if you need to get out of trouble. We're not using any light armor. Medium armor, of course, you do need these. This increases your crit rating for each piece worn. So our crit chance is very high. This increases your stamina recovery and your reduction to cost for each piece worn, and that is why we haven't gone 5-1-1. If you're in an optimized situation and your stamina sustain is off the chart, then of course you are welcome to go 5-1-1. You will drop reduction to cost and you will drop stam recovery, but if you've got that covered, you will get slightly more damage because your flat stats will be higher based on the Undaunted passives. But because we wanted to make sure that we could sustain indefinitely, we've gone with 7 medium. Get this, it's very important. This is for sneaking and sneak detection and stuff like that. You don't necessarily need it, but you can get it if you want, especially if you're doing PvP or solo kind of sneaky stuff. Also, March of Sacrifices, you'll definitely want it for that. This increases your weapon damage by 15%, which is insane. And this reduces the cost of dodge roll and increases your movement speed while sprinting based on the amount of pieces worn. So this also gets your dodge roll down, your sprint reduction cost down, your stam recovery, and also your reduction to cost. Our sustain is very, very good with 7 medium. We are not using any heavy armor, so these are irrelevant unless you do choose to go 5-1-1, which we'll explain in a moment after these other passives. We are a stage 4 vampire, of course. You will want 2 passives here. This one increases your mag and stam recovery by 10% for being stage 2 or above, and you do want this. Undeaf. Reduces the damage taken by up to 33% based on your missing health while under 50. The lower your health goes under 50%, the less damage you take. And that also stacks alongside our Relentless Focus, which gives us a maximum of 15% damage mitigation. So, that also helps a lot for your survivability. Now, Fighters Guild, you will need these. This is Intimidating Presence and reduces the cost of your Fighters Guild abilities by 15%. Stamina abilities, that is, by the way, not your ultimate. So, Beast Trap is cheaper. We do need that. This is insane. Increases your weapon damage by 3% for each Fighters Guild ability slotted. Now, this is a 3% bonus for having this on the bar and another 3% bonus for having this on the bar, even though it already gives us 5. So this is actually 8, which is why I said before in previous setups, and this one, if you're comfortable with it, you can instead put the Fighters Guild on the back. We've got no weapon damage bonus on the back here, so we're quite weak on the back bar. We might be there for a few seconds, and to just plug the gap, you can go here instead and put this on the front. We've already explained that. You don't have to do it, but if you want to, that is the benefit from that. Weapon damage on the back that you wouldn't normally have. But essentially keep it as this setup, you'll be fine. You generate 9 ultimate when you kill undead, Daedra, or werewolf. That's friggin' nuts. 20 ultimate from a potion, 2 ultimate from a siphon and strikes, and 9 ultimate from each kill that you get of this kind. That ulti regen is insane, and you can use your incapacitating strike a lot. Now, we will want this as well, by the way. Your Fighters Guild abilities deal 20% more damage to undead, Daedra, or werewolves, so your Beast Trap will do more damage to them. Now, we don't need any of this stuff. We do need Undaunted. Now, this is where it changes a little bit. Make sure you take all the synergies, first of all. Every synergy you take will give you 4% of your stamina, magicka, and health back, regardless of what they do. And Undaunted Metal. You will need this because your health, your stamina, and your magicka is increased by 2% for each type of armor worn. We're only wearing 1, so we will take the 2% bonus across the board. However, like I said earlier about your recovery, if you are running consistently in very optimized situations, perhaps there are Dwemer spiders firing everywhere, giving you stamina back, people are using Master Staves, the healers are, and you've got really high stamina return, then you can go 5-1-1, which means 5 medium, 1 heavy, and 1 light. This will increase your overall stats by 6%, so your flat damage will be higher if you can sustain it. However, in a lot of testing, 7 medium basically made it infinite sustain. 5-1-1 for this particular build we had to heavy attack a bit more, which is fine, but your overall damage will alter a little bit. Now, we are an orc. I know, he's really squishy and really skinny. He looks like the wood elf that he once was. He is not. He is an orc. Now, before we go into the passives for the orc, yes, the wood elf still performs extremely well and it is disgusting, insane regen for stamina. With this particular build on the Iron Atronach, I could not get below 70% stamina on the wood elf. In fact, even higher than that. It was ridiculous. So if you want infinite sustain, go with the wood elf. You can even go 5-1-1 and be absolutely fine. But of course you don't have a weapon damage increase, so your damage will be slightly less overall. However, if you are comfortable with the fact that you might have to heavy occasionally, orc is going to be for you. This has a 2k max stamina bonus, just like the wood elf does, but also has a 1k max health bonus, which the wood elf does not. When you deal damage with a weapon ability, so your rendered slashes, your light attack, your heavy attack, your poison injection, or your endless hail, you can heal for 600 once every 4 seconds, which can crit. And of course, we reduce the cost of sprint and we increase our movement speed, and we have an increased weapon damage bonus. The flat weapon damage bonus was really nice for this setup, but the Wood Elf doesn't have that. The Wood Elf has recovery instead. Either way, it's up to you. The Orc did perform more in terms of the damage output, but the Wood Elf was very, very sustainable and frankly very easy to use. But you will have to go 5-1-1 with that, because otherwise you'll have a health reduction because you don't have this passive here, and of course you will just over sustain. Finally, medicinal use. Any potion you use will be 30% longer in terms of its duration. We are using weapon pots, which give us major brutality, major savagery, and major endurance, and also gives us stamina back. We use them every single time they run out. With this passive, they last 47.6 seconds, and the cooldown is 45. So if you look here in our potions, you can see that we have a higher uptime than the cooldown, so we can keep these up 100% of the time. Use them all the time. Do not let those run out. Medicinal use is essential. Now, the gear has slightly changed. If you're using the previous setup, stick to it if you want. It's absolutely fine. But this has been optimized for this particular patch. So, we are using Mechanical Acuity. Now, this is a 6-trait crafted set. So, very easy to get exactly what you need. So, you want a Nirnhoned sword for the flat increase damage output. And we have a second Sword of Acuity in Sharpened for an increased damage output as well. We are using poison, so you don't need to worry about the glyphs. The poisons are double dot poisons. I'll put them on the website for what you need to recipe-wise in order to make them. But these proc all the time. They're very, very powerful. But you have 2 swords. Then why do we have 2 swords instead of daggers and all the rest of it? Surely we want a crit, right? Weapon damage. That helps us. Spell damage. That doesn't help us. Stamina. That helps us. Magicka, that doesn't. So we've got 2 negative effects at the same time as 2 positive effects, both on the same stuff anyway, so we're good. But when you deal direct damage, you have a 15% chance to gain a buff, basically, for 5 seconds, and all of your attacks will always be crits. You cannot fail a crit hit while this is active. Now, it has an 18-second cooldown, so it can be up for 5, down for 13. But we've deliberately put them on our front bar, so we can only fire this on our front bar, where our main spammables and big damage output actually is. We're using 2 weapons and 3 jewelry. All bloodthirsty, all weapon damage enchants. However, if you can't craft these in terms of the jewelry, or you don't have enough material, because they are expensive to make. The white jewelry, green, blue, and purple isn't too bad. Golding them out can be a real pain, so you don't have to gold them. But if you don't have the purple materials, there is another way around this. The other set can go on the jewelry instead, but you have to make sure the weapons are mechanical acuity, and then you can have 3 body pieces, which is a lot easier to make. But you will have to farm, obviously, jewelry of your other set. The other set is Reliquin. You don't have to have perfected. You can have the basic version if you want, but this is a crit chance minus Slayer, crit chance again. The stand bonus is only there if you have the perfected version, otherwise it's ignored. But every light and heavy attack that you do will stack up a wind, which I think you saw in a dummy a moment ago. If you do another light attack within a second, but no longer gap than 5 seconds, it will stack another one over and over and over and over up to 20, and it will do massive damage. But you've got to keep the procs up. You have to keep light attacking. You must keep your light attacks up on your bow to make sure that you keep your Hawkeye passive. You must keep your light attacks up to make sure that you get your return from Siphon and Strikes or Leech and Strikes. And you must keep up your light attacks and heavy attacks to make sure that you can keep up your Spectral Bow from your Relentless Focus. So, although Reliquin is an advanced set, if you're not keeping up your light attacks as a Nightblade, you're doing it wrong. So, this works hand in hand with your setup, and it shouldn't be a problem. One thing to consider, however, inside mechanics, you are going to want to make sure that you keep those procs up. So, if you have to run away and get out of stuff, make sure you keep up a light attack at least once every 5 seconds to keep those wins stacking up. Otherwise, they'll fall off and you'll lose a massive amount of damage. And you'll have to stack them all the way up from 1 again. So if you can't effectively use Reliquin and you're just enjoying the Nightblade and you're doing as well as you can, your Spectral Bow is far enough for you and all the rest of it, but you can't keep these procs up because you're struggling, that's when you want to use something else. So there's many stamina sets in the game that you can use at base, especially crafted sets and such as well. They will, of course, give you a lesser damage output, but if you're not keeping up these procs, you're not utilizing the 5-piece set anyway. So you've got multiple options. You've got Alkosh if you can keep on top of synergies and aim them at the target, which is really strong, by the way, especially with multiple synergies. Slightly advanced set as well, but that's a choice you can make. Failing that, of course, Unfathomable Darkness from the previous setup. You will have to change your CPs for that. You can use Hundins, Briarheart, anything you want in place of this until you can get used to it. But remember, this is from trials. You can get it from normal trials, the non-perfected version. Just look for people hosting them or host it yourself. It's really easy to get into. Don't worry about trials being scary. They're really not. The monster set we're using is Krag. We're normally infused on the large pieces. We're divines on everything because we want to take a huge advantage of our Shadow Mundus Stone, because when we're on our front bar, while our set procs, we can crit 100% guaranteed. If that fires, our crits all count massively, and that stone then really kicks in. I know on most setups it's hit or miss as to whether you will or won't crit, but when that does proc, you will. So we make sure we're divines on everything. Krag gives you a penetration bonus to physical penetration, and when you deal damage, you've probably seen the arms come out my back already. You have a 10% chance to basically spawn them, and they'll hit for 1.7k every 0.4 second for 1.2 seconds. So almost half a second's worth of damage, and it can fire every 3. This is rapid. It fires very fast, very often, and although this does have a physical penetration bonus in it, and although so does our weapon here, our sharpened weapon, we have not outcapped or gone over on our penetration for our character. We have considered this in our champion points, and it is a benefit to us because we don't have to put as many points into penetration now, which gives us more points to put into our flat. This is very nice indeed. Tried it with Stormfist, which was unnecessary because we had infinite sustain. Tried it with Veladref, which was hit and miss because we didn't quite hit as high as this did. It was a nice choice to use. It did give you increased flat weapon damage, but this one actually outperformed on this build. Veladref was about 2 or 3k less, and so was Stormfist, so this is staying. Now, don't forget, of course, we are using a Maelstrom bow on the back bar. Now, this is very important. We're using a weapon and spell damage increase glyph on an infused Maelstrom bow. This will dramatically increase your volley damage, but make sure that you don't let volley or Ender's Hail run out for too long, because otherwise it will really impact your damage on a negative side. If you don't have this, do not, I repeat, do not put an Acuity bow on the back. Because if you do, there's a strong possibility this will proc on the back bar when you don't want it to. And then you will lose all of your burst on your front. Do not use an Acuity bow. If you don't have a Maelstrom bow, craft any bow you like. Or get an Agility bow for the increased max stamina on your back bar. That will keep your damage up when you're not on the front bar dual wielding. Do not put an Acuity bow here. Now, we are using, again, trait-wise, Divines on everything, Bloodthirsty on the jewelry, Nirnhund and Sharpened on the main hand and offhand. Now, we're going to go into the champion points first of all, then I'm going to show you the rotation and show you some sneaky tricks as to what you should and shouldn't be doing during the fight. Now, the red tree is actually very similar to all the rest of my characters, in fact, pretty much the same, but this is for pretty much all content. If you're doing some of the harder stuff, you might want to alter these, but that's up to you and your group. But flat out, for most general stuff, 72 points in Ironclad to reduce 23% of the incoming direct damage you receive, 64 and 64 into Elemental and Hardy to make sure that your damage mitigation for pretty much all damage types is fairly even, and 51 into Thick Skin for dot reduction. Just remember, of course, the Unchained passive is now open because you have 120 points in this tree, meaning if you do break free, and you will, your next stamina ability within 5 seconds will cost 80% less. Caltrops is the most expensive thing we have. Throw one of those out if you have to break free, and it will cost you bugger all. 19 points into Quick Recovery to increase your healing received, so any heals you get from yourself or other people. And, of course, the Field Physician passive is open with 10 points in this tree, giving you a 15% mitigation bonus if you're resurrecting someone, and most likely you will be at certain points in time. 44 points into Warlord to reduce the cost of break free, 75 points in Tenacity, and 70.5 points into Mooncalf, so our recovery and our return from heavy attacks is up, and 76 points into Tumbling. You only need 72 here to get a 23% reduction to cost. We do have a massive reduction to cost in our passives as well, so dodge rolling is really cheap, but the rest of the 4 points here are going nowhere. Now, what you can do if you really want to is you can take 4 points out of there and put them into Shadow Ward to make you have 1% block cost reduction if you really want to, because we haven't hit 2% with the last 2 points. They're doing nothing. They can't, unless we get 2%, we're getting nothing out of it. Just the 1. So you can do that if you prefer, but I just throw them all into here, really, because there's nowhere else to put them. And, of course, for doing so, we do unlock the Treasure Hunter passive for having 75 points in this tree, which means if you are farming stuff and you loot treasure chests, you will get higher quality items. So that's a free one, just for having really nice dodge roll reduction. Nothing in here. We're not using it. 61 points into Master at Arms and 6 into Physical Weapons Expert. Now, we have 2 penetration bonus in our setup. So we've got more points to spend. We only need 35 points in here, and with all buffs and bonuses applied, we can actually hit cap really easy. So instead of having 61 points in here, I only have 35, which gives us more points to put here. 56 in Thaumaturge. We are doing a lot of damage over time, especially with our dots on the ground and our Reliquin procs. But of course, we are doing a lot of direct damage. We want to push a little bit higher for that. We are doing a lot of crit, not just when we passively do damage, but also when Acuity kicks in. So 56 points into here to give us a 20% increase to crit damage on top of our passives in our class and our Mundus Stone and our Minor Force from Beast Trap. And 56 points into Mighty to increase all damage that we do from physical, poison, or disease by 12%. I did have 64 into here and then messed with these a little bit, but they actually performed less. So for this particular build, this was really, really nice. Also note this passive here, I do go over this on tanks quite a lot, but if you go low health, not only are you a vampire and you take less damage, but you have this passive that kicks in, which generates ultimate much faster if you survive, which means you can then use your incapacitating strike a lot more often. So don't deliberately go low health, but if you do, you will be rewarded, as long as you're not dead. Now, rotation. This is actually going to be quite simple, but I'm going to explain some tricky bits and pieces. Now, what you need to do before any fight is, of course, get your buffs on. So you want your Siphoning strikes or Leeching strikes on, and you want your Relentless Focus on. Now, you need your Beast Trap down. You need to make sure both buffs are up. Remember both buffs. Beast Trap down. Volley, light, poison, light, siphon, light, caltrops, swap. Now you can sneak in a light attack before Ender's Hail if you are very good with your rotations and there's no gaps and you're very on time with everything. But if you're not, that light attack and wind up will waste too much time, and the previous volley that ran out will now have to wait too long to get those half-second ticks back in again. So if you're not really, really adept at this, then just hit volley and carry on. If you are, then of course you can sneak in the light attack first. Now, again, very simple. Volley, light, poison injection, light, siphon and strikes, light attack, and then caltrops and swap. Your front bar is very, very simple also, but we're going to alter it. Light attack, surprise attack, there's your acuity, 3 times. Then light attack, rend and slashes. Light attack, relentless focus, which will be your bow. Light attack, beast trap, swap. So it's light and surprise attack 3 times, light rending, light bow it will be, light beast trap, swap. Now of course you can't see the bow because it's not ready, so I will show you how that works. Let's just get rid of it first because it's still running. So we'll activate it. We'll go to our back bar, beast trap, volley, light, poison, light, leeching, light, caltrops, swap. Now, if we light attack, our bow is ready, so we use it. Light surprise, light surprise, light surprise, light rending, light bow, ready? Light, bow is ready. Light beast trap, swap. So when you first get to this bar, it's light attack bow, light attack 3 surprise attacks, light attack rending, light bow again, light beast trap, swap. The reason I didn't show you that to start with is obviously because the bow wasn't ready, but that's something you need to keep in your mind. Every rotation is 3 surprises, 1 rending. But at the beginning, light bow, and at the end, light bow. Now, how do you keep your relentless focus up? Every second rotation, fire your bow twice before you swap bars. If you want me to demonstrate that, we'll just get rid of it first. So, let's imagine this is our second rotation. Light bow, surprise, light surprise, light surprise, light rending, light bow again, light relentless focus, so double tap that button, beast trap, swap. That will just keep your uptime on it. The reason we are timing it exactly like this is because We will always have a bow ready on the front bar so long as you start with a light attack. Sometimes it'll be ready early, sometimes it won't be. But as long as you do a light attack, your bow will apply and you can fire it. But light attack surprise can be done very fast. Light attack bow cannot. Because if you hit it, there's a slight delay, then you'll have to fire it. So be aware of that. Now I'm going to show you, of course, on the target dummy. But you do also need to weave in your ultimate here. This is when your bow will be ready automatically. So, for argument's sake, we're going to use it this time. Don't swap when you get caltrops. Instead, fire it and then light attack ultimate. So, we'll do 2 rotations here. I'll do one with the ultimate, one without. We'll start with the one without. Get rid of our bow first. So stack up these little ticks and get rid of it so it's ready. Get our timing right. Okay. Volley, light, poison, light, siphoning, light, caltrops, swap. Light, bow. Light surprise, light surprise, light surprise, light rending, light, pause, bow, light beast trap, swap. Volley, light, poison, light, siphon, light, caltrops, don't swap. Light, ultimate, swap. Light bow, light stab, light stab, light stab, light rending, no, light bow twice. But that's tricky. You see where it tried to use the bow and he squatted instead? That is because of timing. If you do it too fast, your light attack will register, but it won't fire the bow straight away. It will be ready at a weird time. So if you can keep an eye on those little numbers at the bottom there, when it gets to 4, your next light attack will proc the bow, but there's a slight delay. So hit it, then fire it. You have to take a slight breather. It takes a bit of practice to get used to that, but hopefully that one will help. Failing that, if you're really bad at timing that and you can't get that bow to proc just right, you can actually lessen your overall output on your DPS, but make it a little bit simpler for you. And instead of doing 3 of these, do 4. That way, it's guaranteed to be ready, and all you've got to do is press it. But you have to watch it. So once more, to save any more confusion, because this is a little bit much to take in. So, beast trap, swap. Volley, light. Poison, light. Siphon, light. Caltrops, swap. That's what you need to do to start with. If you lag and you miss a light attack, do not panic. Just start your rotation and get your bow in when you can. But you need to make sure that you keep up the same rotation over and over and over and over. Here's your ultimate. Make sure you swap with the ultimate. Light stab, light stab, light stab, light rending, light pause bow, light recast the bow, light beast trap swap. You recast the bow every second rotation, not every one. You see there a light attack and then squatted doing that ability? Again, like I said a minute ago, don't go too quick. If you go too quick, it will bug out on you. I'll demonstrate that one more time. 3, 4. Light attack bow is next. We only need 1 more. Wait a second. Do a full light almost before you fire it. Now, execute. Execute is very simple. You keep your rotation exactly the same on the back bar. Notice I said back bar. Front bar is different. We are not going to use the bow anymore. The bow does less damage than your execute, and every 5 light attacks that we do and fire it, we have to start it all over again, and that will interrupt our execute. We want to make sure that we're using this as much as possible. So what you do is you make sure that your relentless focus was running before execute, and this is what you do. You get your light attacks in, and everybody's happy, and you've got 5 stacks now. You keep those 5 stacks. That's your damage mitigation. Do not consume them. All you have to do is 5 stabs or 4, and then light beast trap swap with your rending slashes up. So front bar is now just constant stabbing. You can see my mitigation buff is still there. I'll keep that, thank you very much, during execute, and I'll just change my rotation to stabs. Now, I'm going to show you a target dummy demonstration with this build as it is now with the shiny food. Shiny food, not cheese food. Showing exactly what I take with me in an actual fight. Here we go. So hopefully that helped, hopefully that wasn't too boring, hopefully now have a better understanding of how to approach this particular build. The Nightblade can be quite complicated. I did probably make it a little too complicated in the rotation, but you don't personally have to do too much to manipulate what happens. A dynamic rotation, you have to keep an eye on so much stuff. Static, by the way, everything is already calculated for you, so it's all done. So, first of all, thank you all very, very much for watching. I hugely appreciate the support, and if you are not subscribing already, please do hit that button. It is free. Furthermore, if you would like to help support outside of the channel, there are some links in the description for Patreon, Twitter, Facebook, the website XynodeGaming.com, where all the written guides are, and of course, don't forget, I do live stream on Twitch every single night from 10 PM UK time, unless I say otherwise on Twitter. Once again, thank you all very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.